Greetings, I'm Vince DiNoto, the designer of this module. This module is going to be working with story maps, and we're going to build 3 different types of story maps that we'll talk about in just a moment. And this is part of the web mapping course. So we're going to create public story maps. That means there's no login required, there's no special information required, that anybody can get to this story map that we're going to create. We're going to use 3 different pieces of software to do this. We're going to use the Google Tours, going to use Knightslab Story Maps, and we're going to use the Esri Story Maps. Now Esri has lots of different types of story maps that you can create, and you're going to be required to create 2 different types. We'll walk you through one, and then you'll choose one of your own after that. So what is a story map? Well, obviously, as its name indicates, it has something to do with a story. It is a story which we're telling with a map. Many times story maps have pictures on them, geographical locations, obviously, if it's a map, or something about an event that may have occurred. They may be things that are occurring today. They may have been things that have occurred in the past. It may be a comparison of 2 different items. For example, it might be looking at income in a community 10 years ago to today. So there's different types of things that can be mapped, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a few moments. You're going to need some types of data sources for this, so you're going to need to bring something into the story map to place into the map so it'll make it understandable. It's going to be understandable by the general population, so we're not going to expecting anybody that looks at this story map to necessarily be an expert in geospatial technology, geography, or even locations around them. So we must tell the whole story in this map. Typically, we find in story maps elements such as images, pictures, video, diagrams. One I didn't put here, historical maps potentially. You're typically got a map of a location. It may be across the entire country. If you're looking at a national trend, it could be within a small area if you're looking at something for just a local community or city. And then there needs to be descriptive text. And the descriptive text needs to be truly defining what's being done there for someone who is completely a novice. So again, we're looking at novice level people, not necessarily looking at people who are experts on this subject. This slide has a lot of print on it. I won't read all the words to you. You can do that on your own time. But a story map should contain several things. One is, what is the purpose of the story map? Who is the audience that you're going to be displaying this information for? You need to make sure that it is very clear, very concise who the audience is. The story map should be a single concept. It should not be multiple concepts, because when you make the story map multiple concepts, what starts happening is it gets too broad a scope and people's minds start wondering. So choose a single topic, and in developing that topic you find there's 3 or 4 other topics that may occur. Create those as separate story maps. Do not create them as all one story map, because then there becomes a definite wondering. Even to the point, for example, if you have a walking tour of your city and each month there's a different neighborhood that they use in the walking tour, don't make that necessarily all one story map, but take each neighborhood and make it a separate story map. It'll make it much more relevant, and people won't spend as much time reading it from the standpoint it might be able to be accomplished in 20 minutes, versus if you make it too long, too complicated, it might take several hours, and once somebody gets into it, they're just going to quit because it's just way too much information for them. So again, be aware of who your audience is and make your story map a single concept. Don't make it multiple concepts. You're going to have to collect information to display. So a story map is going to have pictures, video, old historical maps. It's going to have information, and the information is going to have time and place associated with it. So one of the ways that you can make a story map is it could be a tour of an area. Another type of story map might be a timeline, such as a Civil War battle, and you're showing what is happening with the troop movements on the map at different times of the day during that battle. We're going to build our maps as simple as we can. A lot of times you already have a base map that they're going to give to you. You might use your own base map in some of these applications, but a lot of times the base map's already provided. If the base map is provided, see what the base map contains that can be useful to you. If you have a choice of base maps, make sure you choose the best base map to help convey your message. Most applications give you some amount of customization. Be creative. That's one of the things that make good story maps, is that the creator, the designer, is extremely creative. Keep the person's attention so that they don't get bored after one or two images and decide to leave it. Make it creative the entire point all the way through, so the person gets through it and wants to understand what's going on there. But in the same way, creative it's not necessarily being gimmicky with all special types of dissolves, and every slide dissolves differently. That distracts the user. So you want to be creative in the way it's presented, but yet you don't want to get the person looking at the methodology more than what the content is. Refine the information that's going to be displayed. Don't show one picture of an object from the front face and ignore all the details on the back face. But also, from the same standpoint, don't show 20 pictures of the same statue. That's going to bore me, and I'm not going to want to continue there. And then be aware of who your population is, so you're going to make this available to. As you wrote it, as you started it, as you begin the design work, you need to know what your audience was. But then you have to decide, is this going to be for everybody to look at? Is it going to be for a select population, a group that must log into it? You can control these type of things on some of the different softwares that we're talking about. Not on all, but on some. You need to be aware of copyright law. Just because an image, a photograph, a map is placed online does not mean you have the access and the right to use it. A lot of people assume that if it's placed in a web environment, then you have the rights to use it. You need to get permission to use that. Unless it comes from like a government source or something like Wikipedia, then you have the use of it. And if it's your own images, of course you have use of it. Likewise, as well as needing to understand copyright of information that you use, you must also realize that your information is copyrighted as soon as you create it. I'd strongly suggest you look at Creative Commons, because you should license your usage of your information, because again, as a learning community, you want to give other people the opportunity to build off of what you know and what you've already presented, and they don't need to reproduce what you've already done. So be aware of what Creative Commons is. Do a little research on Creative Commons. Okay, the first type of story map we're going to create is a Google tour. It's probably the easiest of the three types that we're going to talk about. It's actually a tour of the country or a tour of an area based upon some images. So the first line there, you see the location where you can go to Google Tours. You're going to have a Google account to make this work. You need to make sure that the Google Earth plugin is installed in your browser. Now, I've found a few browsers having difficulty sometimes with the Google Earth plugin, so make sure that you can get that installed. And also, you're going to have administrative rights potentially on that machine, because a lot of times networks tie down what a user can do. If your machine is tied down, make sure you get administrative rights to get this browser plugged in. There's no additional software that's needed for this, so you don't have to have anything else other than just this Google Earth plugin and an account on Google. You have a link here for an example that I've created. It's best viewed in full screen mode, not in a smaller screen, so make sure you do that. You can see sort of what I have built. And to complete this, you're going to need to have at least 10 pictures that you know where they're located at. You know what the geography is of where they're located. So once you go to the Google Tour page, you're going to come to this page here, which is you give the tour a name. You provide your information either organizationally or as an individual, and probably in this case it's going to be as an individual. Make sure your name is descriptive so that people can find your tour that you create and use it. That's one of the reasons we're doing this. It's not just going through an exercise, but actually creating something that is usable. There's going to be an aerial image over on the right hand side, and you're going to have some zoom controls that you can work with. So there's different things that you're going to see as we get into this tour. So after you get this all together, you click Create Tour. you're going to come up with something like this. So we have this introductory slide here. You see that first slide up there over the top here, this introductory slide here. So this is going to be the introduction. This is going to be this first slide if you think of it from a PowerPoint way that people see. So I've given my tour name on the previous screen and my tour, so I just put my name here. We can then add a photograph here. You can add a short introduction here of what this is all about. You can play with if it's a 3D and color pass and some stuff like that, and there's some advanced options here also. So first thing is to give it some information. Your photographs must be in an album and uploaded. You can upload into this album, and if you know the URL of a photograph, you can search for it by URL also. So you have to have these photographs here, and this is just one of my albums that I have that we opened up here. So you can upload photographs, and you can find photographs by the URL, but you need to be able to get this information here. You cannot have images on your local computer that's going to work for you. Okay, so I've created an introductory image here. It's a Canon, but we're at Gettysburg, so that's what I used here, and I wrote a little description here. And so now we're ready to put the first slide in, so it's asking you to add the location. So we have to find Gettysburg, Pennsylvania here. Well, we're in the general vicinity, and so we're going to have to drill down until we find Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. You're going to set this initial zoom level, what the map's going to be. The type of tour has been disabled, and the roads have been included just to make things a little bit easier to find. So we're ready to add that next image. Click Add Location, and I chose a name over here called Little Round Top, and I found where Little Round Top is, and I drug this little camera icon. That's because that's what I'm using for where my pictures are, and I wrote a little description here. As you can see, one of the things that's unique about Google Tours is that you can put up to 25 images at the same location, so you can have your multiple images at the same location. That's a little bit unique compared to some of the other items that we'll look at and how they function. And then you just basically repeat this procedure over and over and over again, and by constantly repeating this procedure, what's going to occur for you is that you're going to build slide after slide of locations where you took images. So this tour was designed to be about the Gettysburg battlefield, and so you can find information that we've put in different slides and different locations and things like that. And once you're all completed, then you're going to save it, so you're done editing. You can come back and start editing again once you're logged in. Now, if you're just viewing your presentation as a user and you're not logged in, no, you can't edit. If you're logged into your Google account, you can come back and constantly edit, change, modify as things go. One of the things to be careful of, if you save it again, did it keep the same URL or is it a different URL? There's also software around to shorten these URLs that you might be able to use. So if you want to try to make this a smaller URL, so you're going to embed it potentially in a web page or whatever, be aware there's ways to do that. So it's pretty straightforward. You really just need to get out there and work on it to be able to know what you need to do. If you make a mistake, you throw it away, you start again. It doesn't make any difference. So it's not one of those critical items that it's always going to be there. You can throw things away, get rid of them, redo it. Your first one's not going to be nearly as good as your second or third one. So this is how Google Tours works. For your assignment, all you're going to provide your instructor with is a URL of your Google Tour. That's all you have to provide. Your instructor will then go and view your Google Tour and make constructive criticism of what is needs to be corrected on your tour. So that's be how you'll be graded on this part of the module. Knightslab, here's where the URL of Knightslab is. This project started at Northwestern University and grew out of there. You're going to log in with a Google account. This gives you a little greater latitudes on what you can control and what you cannot. Google Tour didn't give you much real control, but this gives you a little bit more control. You can embed this in a web page, which I really like the thought that you can embed it inside of a web page and not have to have it as its own web page. There is some ability to do code editing. We're not going to get to that depth in here, but you can edit some code. You are limited to only one image per location, which is different than the Google Tour. Again, some of these have strengths that others don't, and vice versa. And the base map is going to be OpenStreetMap. It's not going to be an aerial view like what we just saw. The aerial view was pretty nice for Gettysburg Battlefield because we're looking at the terrain. We're not really looking at city streets and things like that. For Knightslab, we are stuck with the base map of OpenStreetMap. That can have its advantages for other types of tours that we might want to build. And we built basically the same subject area that we did on that first URL that we gave you, not the one for Gettysburg. Same area of Jeffersonville, Indiana, and arts and architecture, and you can see this one here and see how it looks different compared to the one we gave you at the beginning of the Google Tour one. So when we get into Knightslab, we got kind of a strange picture of the Earth. Obviously, the world is repeating itself multiple times here, because that would be basically one copy of the world. It's been repeated multiple times. Click New and provide a title and all the other information that it requests. So I've clicked New, and you can see some of the things it's requesting. Provide a headline. Locate where your images are. Provide photographic credits. As usual, you have a discussion, and make this good writing. And then click Add a New Slide. And basically, you're going to repeat this process over and over. You can set your own manual zooms to the location. So how tight do you want to be zoomed in, and how far away do you want to be away? You have no control, unfortunately, over the icon they use. I wish you did have control over the icon, but you really don't. You can reorder your slides, which is a nice feature. And you can preview your map before it's being created, so you can see what it's going to really look like to the general population. And here's one that we created of Gettysburg, similar information of what was in the example that we did for the Google Tour. And you can go out and take a look at what we created. Very simple, very straightforward, very easy to use. But you have some areas that you have more control over, other areas that you don't have as much control over. The one that specifically I'm not real fond of is that I have to use their icon. So for your assignment, it's the same basically as what it was for the previous example. This time you provide the URL of a Knightslab created story map. Again, we don't tell you what the topic must be. Must have at least 10 slides, so just like what we had on the previous one. There's other open source story maps, because these are not, while they are maybe made by commercial people or from a college or university project, there are other open source ones. Here's a good source to find information on different story map types, and I've listed some here in no particular order. The JS on the end means they use JavaScript, and you can play with them as much as you would like. For the class, you're only required to use the 3. If you choose to use one beyond that, contact your instructor and see if your instructor is willing to give you some extra credit for that, or it can be part of another project. So the Esri story map, first of all, the first thing to note is there's lots of templates to choose from. There's not just a single template. Most of the templates run directly off of ArcGIS Online. There's a few templates that you have to download and configure and put them on your own web server. You must have a web server running either Apache or IIS on it for it to work. We're not going to deal with any of those as a required part of this course or this module, but realize that they do exist. A place you could put this information is on your ArcGIS server, since it is running a web protocol, the IIS. You can find the whole list of apps here. There's quite a few different ones there. We're going to go through one that is sort of a tour like what we did before as an example for you, but then you can experiment with others. In fact, you'll have to as part of the assignments for this section. Here's some different story maps that I have created. You can see that there's a map tour one here. There is another one that's a map journal that I've created. Some that have short URLs that you can't really tell what they are because of the short URL. And this one actually runs on one of my own servers. You've seen that IP address before, and you can play with this story map here. So these are some of the different ones that I have created, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do. Not saying mine are expert ones, but it's just showing you some of the different things that you can do with the story map. Again, we're going to do a tour story map as one of the requirements. That's the one this example is based upon. But then we're going to also allow you to create one of your own choosing out of the predefined templates. So after we go there and load this up and start working on it, again, I'm in a web browser. Make sure your web browser is fully functional on this website. Some browsers work better than others, and you just need to make sure that you have a fully functional browser when you're working here. The first screen is going to ask us how to locate images and video. They cannot be on your local hard drive. They cannot be on your local hard drive. They must be in some type of a web source. The web source that I use, Flickr, it's a product made by Yahoo, and there are free accounts that are available that you can put quite a bit of information up there. In fact, most people will never fill up the free account unless you're just a person that goes out and takes lots of pictures. You may only have 99 pictures in this story map, and therefore if you have more pictures than 99 in that folder, it's going to only use the first 99. Now you can delete some and get more in there and things like that. It will only use 99 pictures in this one. So you select a photo set or a tag and you move forward. If the picture has been georeferenced, this is a manual georeferencing. So when you're in Flickr, you can say, here's where this picture is on a map. If you've done something like that, where you've done a manual georeferencing, it will come across and be placed in the right place on your map. So for this example, I'm using a folder called Jeffersonville, and here's some of the images in my folder. Here's 63 locations that it georeferenced, and 63 places it could not georeference, and 36 that it did. 63 and 36 is 99. That's as many pictures as it could look at. I had more than 99 pictures in that folder. I choose if I want to use it. I press import, and it will allow me to import that picture. So here you can see the beginnings of my Esri story map. I've got a GPS here in my hand. This is a little gazebo in one of the public parks. You can see some of the pictures down here that I've imported that we were going to make use of in this story map. We want to not, the first thing I did at least was I removed all images I did not want to use. So I did click the organize button to open a new window, and I removed these images. Click the image basically and press the delete key. It's very, very simple. You can also import additional images from Flickr. Be careful not to import images that you already deleted, because those are not really good. As I said, the pictures that I manually georeferenced worked well, and they came out very, very accurate where they needed to be. Make sure you are constantly saving your work so you don't lose it in the story map. You will have an intro slide like you did before on some of the other story maps that we talked about. Your pictures should not be the camera number. You know, every time you take a picture with your camera, your smartphone, whatever, it gives it a number. This should not be what you use for the picture. It should not be that camera number. Click on the first picture, edit it the same way we did before. Write a description, click the share button. You can share it publicly or just within your organization, and go from that point. And here is an example that I have created, this one of Jeffersonville, Indiana. Unfortunately, as I noted to you before, it will not read the metadata on the picture for your georeferencing. It only takes it if it was manually georeferenced. It does not read that metadata that is stored within every image of position. So your assignment here is to create 2 story maps. One of them should be a tour, and one of them can be a story map of anything that you would like. Provide the URL to each map for your instructor, and that's how this will be graded. So you have basically 4 assignments here: a story map from Google Tours, a story map from Knightslab, and 2 story maps using Esri. Have fun creating your story maps.